Hey everybody, welcome back to the Connection Project with Sally here. And I am super, super excited today for my guest. Arianna Real Cook is here with us today in the house.
Oh,
And I am so excited. Let me just tell you a little background on her. She is the owner of Craft Sierra Madre, which I thought for sure I was going to mess up, a
you got
multi-creative learning space. She teaches and guides through creative classes like watercolor, yoga, meditation, and energy work. She's also a level 2 inner alignment coach, which is where I met her, specializing in helping other creatives and healers to take their dreams and launch their businesses while working through all of the negative self-talk, past traumas that arise when we put ourselves out there in the business world. And I know all about that.
it.
So, Ariana, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm
Thanks for
so
having me.
Oh, yes. I'm so excited to have you here today. Beginning stages of my podcast and just doing my invites in the beginning here. And like you came to mind, and even though I'm going to give a little background, we don't really know each other that well.
Right?
And it's been working out, the universe it's been so interesting as I'm inviting people into this space. um, it's funny how it's working out because you had said something to me. We met, I'll give it everybody, our listeners, a little background. We met in our inner alignment coaching. We were doing a challenge and we were both participating and teaching in that um, with our one of our mentors, Kim Beekman. Shout out to Kim and all the great work that she's brought forward for us and for all her clients, and then all our clients with our inner alignment childhood trauma work. And yeah, I met you there, and it was in a group of many other women. And I was just like, yeah, I need to know her more. I literally said that to myself.
Same.
Your vibe, what you were doing, your creative pieces. And so, as I'm starting to look for my guests for my beginning sessions here, my beginning things I'm putting out, you came to mind. And so it was so interesting because I reached out to you and then you were like, you were saying to me that you had been thinking about me. So it was so interesting. And that's happened in a couple different people that I've reached out to. Yeah, it's just been interesting. And I just think that's the way it's supposed to work. And as an entrepreneur and a coach and a healer, am leaning into what's been fun for me, which is this podcast, starting this podcast, which is so weird because I have so much trouble with visibility. And now here I'm doing a podcast. So it doesn't really make sense, but I think I'm supposed to be doing it.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, so I was really interested in my thoughts around connection and then how you're connecting, like how we just energetically connected in that space without even saying
Yeah.
anything to each other or even knowing. Interesting are both our takes on that. So that's one piece. And the other piece is you bringing what I'm asking all of my guests is, what does connection mean to you? And I'm really intrigued after you answer that is you're so multifaceted with your different aspects of your business and what you're doing, and how it all intertwines together and how that works um, around bringing people connected in this entrepreneurial world. So I know that was like a mouthful for me, but yeah, I'm super excited to talk to you, and hopefully people could follow all the stuff I was saying. Super excited to talk to you, and super excited about all that you're doing and bringing bringing forward. And even
Yeah.
I want you to make sure at the end to mention your retreat.
Oh, yeah, I will.
I just
It's
because I was literally
the retreat is a big part actually of how this all like flows together. But I think it's funny that you picked up on when you asked me to be on this podcast, and part of the conversation was, how do I like mold all of these or funnel all of these things into one cohesive space. And I feel like that really has been the explanation of my life. um, from my early 20s, being a really young mom. I was a single mom in my 20s. um, you know, Spent primarily most of my career actually in the bar world. I was a bartender so that I could take care of my kids. And also that's how I stumbled into yoga. Weirdly, one of the other neighborhood bartenders was doing her Kundalini training and would do free yoga classes in one of the bars in the neighborhood for all the bartenders. And I didn't even know what Kundalini was. We were just like, doing like weird arm motions and breathing really fast. And it
I
felt
love it.
great. It felt great. And we were like, okay, cool. We'll ride along with this. But in that space, it was always about doing a lot of things for survival, to like figure out how do you live, especially living in LA too. It's really expensive. So what are all of the things that you have to do to, just make a life for yourself with young kids? And that momentum moved through even into present day, but it shifted as I started getting into my spiritual work and noticing how being a multifaceted person can work to your benefit instead of just surviving. And that's kind of where I have moved to, and where I attract, my people, because I think a lot of us are like that. We live in this dichotomy of the American dream where you're supposed to like pick a job and work really hard, and that's going to, give you all the benefits of life, your pension and your retirement, and all, check off all the boxes. But then there's also this other part where we hear about the other side of the American dream, and it's, do what makes you happy. And, if you're, what's that phrase? If you love what you do, it's never work, and that kind of a thing. And so I think we live in this like tug of war between what are our responsibilities and what do we do that we love. And I think just my own Aquarius rebellious nature always fought more for I want to do what I love. And so how do I make this work? Because, we still live in this 3D world, and we have to pay bills, and we have to do these things. And as I really sunk into my intuition and my connection to that, I started to notice that those avenues just opened up more fluidly than the others did. Really in the past 6 years, when I started to choose myself and what that path looks like, all of these creative endeavors just it just falls into place. And I think most people have experienced that at least at one point in their life. And so it's a good connecting point that I use with my clients, because once you've done it once, you can start to manifest that space a little more rapidly, because like Kim Beekman says, you have the data. This has worked before. So we can the good data, also as an Aquarius, we're very like linear thinkers. So for me, I'm like, well, here's the data. The data shows, that when I left the bar world, because I was just tired. I was like, I loved working in the bar world. I loved, I wasn't a bartender for forever. I moved into management and consulting, worked with a lot of really, really beautiful bars and restaurants in Los Angeles, building cocktail programs, traveling around, learning about distillation and all these things. And my favorite thing was training bartenders. I love training bartenders. I love training staff. Hospitality is a lost art that I love so much. And I think it is the best training wheels for spiritual work, because you really have to learn how to manage so many different people and all of the different personalities. And God, I wish I knew about doshas and human design back then.
Right. And so that's interesting, just as you say that about, the consulting work and that work around hospitality and what a lost art form that is, right? And so when we're talking about connection here
Oh,
and
yeah.
what that means, I talk about this all the time, right? That connection is so important in hospitality. It isn't just about saying hello. It's really about being present, right? And connecting with
Yeah.
whoever you're speaking to. And I say this all the time now. I mean, I come from the Western world of the hospital setting, and we don't like to hear this probably in healthcare, but we are a hospitality business,
Yes.
are, right? And our clients are our patients. And really, what people want in that hospitality world and in the healthcare world and in everywhere, when I go to the checkout, I feel so much better when I connect with the person ringing up my groceries and she's not talking to someone else. So in the hospitality business, right? It sounds like you were already back then intertwining connection and how important presence and connection are in your business. Otherwise, I think that's a piece about being successful in those areas.
Oh, absolutely. There is there is something to knowing knowing what your sweet spot is. And I know that for me, um, especially in the past 2 years where I've gotten into coaching and things like that, um, and understanding that there is a certain something that attracts people to me, that I have this innate ability to make weird and difficult things feel simple and approachable and easy. And I understand that that's why a lot of people like to work with me. Um, and I absolutely know that part of that comes from working in the hospitality industry for so long. Um, because if you're working in a bar and it's not fun, then why are you doing that? And I would, that was like one of the things that I always expressed in my training programs with my staff and my employees. Like, you get to go and like make drinks for people all night. Like, that is actually really fun. And moving that into the corporate world, same thing. And then once you lose that sense of fun, the connection to why you're doing it just doesn't exist anymore. And you should be doing something else. And it's okay to, shift in different places. And I think it's what has kept me so successful in this world for so long.
Yeah, that's interesting because when you say that, that makes me think about, you said something before about being really knowing your sweet spot.
Yeah.
And so really knowing your sweet spot, some of us don't know our sweet spot, or sometimes we lose what is our sweet spot, and we try to be what someone else's sweet spot is, right? We try to, especially in the entrepreneur world, we can talk about that, right? I was
Mhm.
definitely one that get to watch what other people are doing.
Yeah.
And when I do that, when I try to fit a square peg in a round hole in 2023, it doesn't work,
Nope.
right? Because I have my own sweet spot. And so you have to start to connect to yourself, know that sweet spot. And sometimes, like I said, we can maybe lose it a little bit, or kind of forget. So there's a remembering about connecting back to ourselves to then blossom out, and then our connection to others, and that interconnectedness is can be so amazing.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I love that you said that, the sweet spot, because that's how I feel about that sweet spot. Because we're always looking
Well,
to see somebody else's sweet spot, like, oh, Ariana's doing this, and so I should do that. But I'm not Ariana, I'm Sally. So
yeah.
how does that look for me? Um, and what are my gifts or my medicine, my sweet spot, and what is yours? If other entrepreneurs are listening, or if whatever job you're in, like you said, this whole started cultivating as you were bartending.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love that. I love that. Doing yoga in the bar, like, it's just that self-development that started, way back then for you, opening your mind, and connecting to who you are.
Yeah.
So
I
important.
think I think my connection to my intuition has always been pretty strong, but I also grew up in a very spiritually open, like, this was nothing weird for me. So it's an easy road for me to step into. Like, I grew up in LA. My parents were hippies in the 70s. Like, this is this is not foreign territory. So I do feel like I have a little advantage in that, more so than, tarot card readings and all that stuff is just like part of regular vernacular. Um, on the opposite end, the struggle has been to be more grounded.
Right.
So I bridge that gap for other people. I'm usually the one who's pulling the very grounded people into more of their imaginative space, which is where a lot of the art and the creativity comes into play.
Yeah,
I
can
mean,
we
I'm
talk about that a little bit? Your art,
yeah.
you have such a you have such a spectrum. Like I said, you're doing tech, you're bringing art, you're a creative, you're a writer, and now you're a coach that's bringing the spirituality piece, you're a yogi. So you have like many things that you're connecting or interconnecting together for
Yeah.
yourself and your clients. And I find that really intriguing.
Yeah. I have always been an artist. I was the kid that would, draw on walls and all of that stuff. And I went to art school and before I had my children for a very few short years, I ran away to Cabo San Lucas and used to paint business signs on businesses to make money. So I was always at some point, using my art as a creative expression. And even when I was in the bartender world, um, and consulting, and this is kind of where like the tech part came into play was, um, I also use I used to do like underground parties and promote underground parties, and had a very wide social network, um and you have to make flyers. And so I just got really good at making like rave flyers back in the 90s, which is where it all started. um and again, it started off really as just, what do I need to do to make ends meet? It was, the hustle of, we're just doing this and it's fun. And I get to, merge all of these things together. Like, I know how to paint and I know how to do art, and this all just seems to fit. That energy flows easily. As I've gotten into, my spiritual life, my 40th birthday present to myself was, I was firmly going to quit the bar world, and I opened up a brick and mortar community art center. I wanted to get back into art. I wanted to teach art, and I really wanted to bring about that space in my community. And once I put that intention out there, literally it was like a block away from my house where I'm sitting right now. I think it was, yeah, it was a couple of days. Now that it's January 2nd, it had to have been like January. It was like January 2nd or 3rd of 2018. And I just went for a walk around the corner to go get my morning coffee. And there was the for lease sign on this building right around the corner. And it was big, beautiful, hardwood floor, empty space. It was like, I think this is the space. And within less than a month, I had the keys to the building and was building a business that I had no idea how to do, other than, I had made a picture of what I wanted it to look like on my vision board, and that's what it looked like. I didn't have a pandemic in the vision board, so that wasn't in the forecast. But what it did was it provided me a space to sink back into art, sink back into teaching. And back then, I wasn't a yoga teacher. And so I was bringing in yoga instructors to do yoga classes, and to kind of I didn't quite have an understanding of what it would look like, but I just knew, these were all the things that made me happy. It really, and I share this because for most people in business, when they're like, how am I going to find my people? My business was purely out of my own selfish desire to be able to do the fun things that I wanted to do, and everybody else just got to participate in it.
I love that.
And I think that energy, people get that and they want to be a part of that energy. And so that's why I had my business for as long as I did. The pandemic came, I had to shut it down. And then everything transferred into online. and just going back to those old skills that I had of making rave flyers, like, well, we're going to transition into, teaching online. And I had to really quickly learn how to maneuver that world. Luckily, there's so many programs now that are so easy to use. Like, I don't know how to code. I don't know how to do those things. But a Wix website is plug and play, and I can snap a picture and put it on Instagram. And it doesn't really have to be as serious as what most people think it is. And again, that's my gift, is being able to teach people how to do that in a way that just doesn't feel very serious, and can be attainable and approachable. The long view for me, which is where I am now, is when I did start doing my yoga teacher training during the pandemic, because like, what else were we doing?
Yeah.
The idea in my brain was, well, I want to be able to do retreats, and I can, like, how fun would it be to like teach art? And well, now I can teach yoga. And so it's less work for me to bring in other people if I can just do it myself, which now in hindsight, I'm the opposite. I'm like, I don't want to do everything. But how it plays out for me altogether is, I have figured out through all of these connections that when we can put ourselves in a full sensory experience, when you can bring your imagination into a space where you can touch, taste, feel, create with your hands this thing, it makes it tangible and easier to manifest. And so I love being able to facilitate a container space where people can be immersed in that way. And so having the body experience of yoga and the creative aspects of art and breathwork and meditation, you get to like immerse yourself in this whole sensory experience where anything feels possible. And when you're in that space, really anything is possible. I mean, you can make magic happen, like that.
I love it. I love it. Something I want to go back to with what you said, because it is an experience. So
Mhm.
what you're selling is things
Yeah.
you love in an experience.
Yeah.
And so to be able to do that, if you're an entrepreneur listening, if you're starting your business, if you're thinking about starting a business, because so many people are in so many different, there was so much of the people quitting, after the pandemic, people burning out,
Yes.
people wanting to spend more time doing what they love. But
Yeah.
sometimes, like me, I wasn't even sure what I loved anymore, because once you get into that hustle,
Yes.
you get out of flow. So the first thing is connecting back to yourself,
Yeah.
finding what lights you up, which it sounds like you did, and have kind of always sounds like you kind of always had that, like what lights you up. But sometimes we lose that. So finding what lights you up, and then putting like caution to the wind kind of about like, how is, if you are thinking about going into business, how is that going to look as far as that connection of how things are going to be connected and present and feel good in your body in that experience. And so that really sounds like what you're doing, creating just an amazing experience.
I do want to touch on, though, the throw caution to the wind. There is an element to that, but amongst all of this stuff, I still have a regular day job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just to throw it out there, I work in television, and that was a conversation in the middle of the pandemic with my husband, who was like, "Can you please get a real job? Can you please get a real job that, like, pays like a real paycheck?" Because while he thoroughly embraces all of my fun ideas, there, like I said, I'm the airy one who needs a little more grounding, and I usually pull the grounding people up into the air. Um, and so I digressed, and he has worked in television for a really long time. And the funny thing is, I agreed to this with my heels in the dirt. And also in the back of my brain, I was like, there's no way this is going to work out. Like, you have to get into the union. It's really, really difficult. It, you have to jump through a bunch of hoops and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And I miraculously got into the union within 30 days from when I started. And I was like, oh, crap. Well, I guess this is happening. And again, going back to like, I will say that I am always acutely aware of my intuition and noticing when the doors open. And even though this was a thing that I did not want to walk through this door, it was like, for all intents and purposes, everything is pointing into this direction. So I guess I'm going there. What it provided me, and I cannot tell you, Sally, how many times I cried because, like, I'm selling out. I'm giving up, my work for a paycheck, and it just feels horrible, and I'm going to be miserable, and I'm going back to working these, like, I left bartending because I didn't want to work these horrible hours. Now I'm going back to this, yes, it's television and it's fun, but we work 16-hour days. Like, my feet hurt. It's awful. But what it provided me was, my end goal for a really, really, really long time was travel. And I had never traveled internationally. That was for like rich people who had a lot of money. That was not for people like me, who lived in a very small income bracket. And within that first year, I got booked to do a television show, Daisy Jones and the Six, in New Orleans, which is my most favorite city ever. And I don't even drink anymore. But I love that town. So I got to spend 4 months there, working on a beautiful television show with people who are still my family. We still, that crew, we have a text message chain. I mean, God, it's been 2.5 years since we worked together, and we still text each other every single day. And the day that I booked that show, Jeannie from Yoga Farm had texted me off to the side and said, "Hey, I'm doing this retreat in Italy. Do you want to come?" And I was like, I had no money. I had none of, like, and it was just one of those things where I was like, yes, I want to come. I want to come to Italy. Because in the back of my brain, I had always wanted to do retreats. And so opening that door to this job that I sold out my soul for a paycheck to, opened up this whole world of opportunity, that now I get to juggle side by side. Is it hard sometimes? Yes. But, this past year, when we went on strike, was when I really jumped into taking my personal coaching business very seriously. And now have had to make the decisions of how much work do I do within television and be congruent with my coaching. And so it allows me the ability to, now I do what they call day play. So I'm not permanently on set. I pick up days, 3 times a week here and there. So it still funnels my financial until I can outweigh the other one. And there is a lot of, I think it's important to understand that you can do both as you move into the spiritual world, and into coaching and entrepreneurship and all of those things. But I do also find that when I make the choice to do the work that aligns with my soul, those opportunities open up more. When the strike was over and I had to go back to the show that I was working on full time, and I told my boss, and I was so scared to tell him, I can't go back full time. I can only go back part time because I have 2 coaching clients that I've made a commitment to that I have to finish this work with. And he was like, I get it. I understand. It's totally fine. And I'm telling you, within 24 hours, I booked 2 more personal coaching clients. So it's not lost on me that funnel of energy opens where it needs to open.
That's beautiful. Yeah. So I know I said throw caution to the wind, but I didn't throw caution to the wind either in my entrepreneurial world. And Yeah, but I think, I guess what we can hone in on here is that connection to knowing what feels good for you. And
Yeah.
just because someone else is, if we're speaking to the entrepreneurs and the young entrepreneurs today, if just because what feels good for one, it does not mean it's always good for the other, because you know your own self more. And the more that you know yourself and what is going to feel good for you, your family, financially,
Yeah.
um as you said, you are connected to your intuition. So you kind of knew, even though you dug your heels in, this is what was going to have to happen. And then you knew when you were going to go back, like, okay, I can't go full time. And things seem to just, work out. And so it doesn't mean it's always easy, but the more that
Yeah.
we're connected to ourself and what we want and what lights us up, the easier those decisions are, even though they're hard. I mean, they're hard decisions sometimes when we're navigating this world of entrepreneurship. Yeah, I've shed a lot of tears over the last couple years in the entrepreneur world, because it is kind of looked at like, oh, it's going to be exciting. You leave your 9 to 5 and you're going to be, but there's a lot that goes along with entrepreneur
So
ship
much.
and creating your own community and finding community so you don't feel isolated, and the connection with community. And so there's so many aspects of it. But I love your story on how you've created this life for yourself
Yeah.
almost by manifesting it. Sounds like you manifest a lot, which I love.
Yeah. I manifest that.
And so that's beautiful, because that is a connection. And knowing yourself, what you really want. Um, knowing that I don't know that I can afford to go to Italy. But I know that I want to do this other thing with retreats, and I really think I need to do this. I did something similar. I did breath work in Hawaii last year, and it was not my retreat, it was another coach's retreat. And I signed up before my breathwork certification was completed, and then I started to get cold feet because I didn't know
Mhm.
her that well. And I don't know, I just got nervous at the end, and I was like, I don't know, I don't think I can go. But part of me, when I signed up originally without a lot of thought behind it, I was like, I know that I want to do retreats, and I want it to be part of my business plan, and I want to facilitate. And I knew how much I love doing breath. So amongst the other things that I do, but I went, and it was an amazing experience. And I almost didn't go. I almost let that crazy voice in my head tell me that
Or
I
just
shouldn't
tiny bad
go.
ideas.
Yeah, yeah. She's got a couple names. There's a couple different ones. But yeah, she was like, "Oh, not safe to go. You're not going to do well there. That's not a good idea." And so I had to really get back down to my roots and connect and be like, "Yeah, I think I'm going to go." I made this commitment. And it blew wide open a bunch of doors for me.
Yeah.
So my initial instinct to say, "I can do this," um was my good instinct. Because sometimes we do jump, right? And we think it's our instinct, and so we have to kind of figure that out. But yeah, the more that you are in alignment and connect with yourself, these other things just work themselves out. And that's how it seems like you've been kind of living your life.
I
I
have.
love it.
Um, I it is the joke that when I first started working with Kim, um, I'm acutely aware that I can manifest things really easily. But for me, it was because I was brought up in that hustle culture. Um, I I used to call it save my ass money. I'm like, I can manifest save my ass money really quick. A couple $100 here, I'll get a random check in the mail from something, weird. Like I'm one of those people. But I cannot manifest longevity. And so for me, when I first started in with inner alignment, it was about figuring out the equation because I'm like, I'm so close. I figured out this, but I can't quite, but there's a missing piece of the puzzle that I can't figure out. Um, and I've gone through multiple iterations of this because, for all intents and purposes, I'm a smart person. So I should be able to figure this out. And as we know, our brains are really actually pretty dumb. And we
Sometimes we're
maneuver.
not supposed to figure it out.
Well, and so this is where I was going to go with this is I have really, really leaned into the idea that even a bad decision is a good decision, especially in entrepreneurship and in business, because you can't do anything if you're not doing anything. And some of our best lessons in life come from really shitty decisions. Pardon
Yeah.
my
No,
language. They come from really bad decisions.
I gave a
And
disclaimer in the beginning of this podcast that there might be some swearing happening.
good. I mean, I did come from the bar world, so
Well,
I am prolific.
shitty is small on the list of words that I usually use and have I think already used on the podcast. So I kind of gave that disclaimer on week one, like if that's going to be offensive, and I'm probably not going to be for you. Yeah. So yeah, I agree there. I mean, again, we learn from our failures. We just
Yeah.
don't like to fail, societally and a lot of different reasons, right? But we learn from our failures. And when you step into the entrepreneurial world, there are going to
You
be,
you
there's
have
going
to
to
be
be
okay to
failures.
fail.
Yeah. There's not,
It's
I know
inevitable.
I say this all the time that like, people are stepping in, especially in the world I came from, because I took a certification in nurse coaching first. So I'm a board certified nurse coach. And all that means is I don't just coach nurses, which is the confusing point, but I'm a nurse who now is a coach and has a board certification in it. But, you know, there's no more like like opening yourself wide open to let all the feelings, all the visibility, everything comes out when you step into the entrepreneurial world. And so I say, I think that's how we're going to raise the consciousness of the world in healthcare, anyways, because the nurse
Yeah.
coaches that are coming out of their certifications, everybody is in the self-development world now and really tapping into like what's happening with that with their own self. And then as we all tap in like we did in inner alignment, it radiates out and there is a connection because we're all connected, right? And so we eventually raise the vibration. So I think all of this is so important, and I love how you are bringing so many different pieces of your gifts in, and you really talked about it best when you were talking about all the senses. Like you provide an experience for your clients that touches into all the senses. And honestly, that's what people remember. And that's what makes them feel connected to themselves and, probably to you as their coach,
Yeah.
because you're providing them that, um, which is so
Well, and
important.
it is, so in my coaching work, I fell into this niche of coaching spiritual workers in the tech world. So it and the funny thing is I fell into this during my last retreat that I went to when I went to Italy again this past year, with a bunch of other fellow yoga teachers, personal coaches and things like that. And they were just starting their businesses. And we're talking about the fear that comes up around social media and Instagram. And, everybody was like, I got to make a website, but I don't know how to do it and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, I know how to do that. Like this was not my intention at all to jump into this business. But I'm like, I can whip together a Wix website like really quick. And so just as that like friendship connections, I had offered this to a couple of women. What wound up happening is, my analytical linear brain was like, oh, I'll make a Google questionnaire. They can just fill out this information, send it over to me, and I can whip out a website in like 3 days, super fast. And it took weeks to get this information from people because it turned into coaching sessions. Because then it was like, well, what do I price my class at? It's like, what does that mean? And what am I telling people about? Like, I have to write an about me. What do I write an about me? Like,
Who am I? That's what my
right.
person
Who
that
am
did
I?
my
Like,
website, it was a whole coaching thing.
it
Like,
turned into like a whole existential crisis. And I
yeah,
was like, it's just a website. Um, and so what I discovered is um, this niche that I have of building tech things, but being able to coach people through this process. Um, because again, I really believe that no bad decision, I mean, no decision is a bad decision. Um, and and a lot of people in the spiritual world have a really hard time with the tech world. Um, and so it again is just kind of how this all connected. But what I really try to, the coaching aspect that I try to express to my clients is, because we don't use yellow pages anymore, we don't use white pages. How do people, what is the importance of being on tech? And like, we had talked about earlier, you have a friend who has a flourishing business and she doesn't even have a website.
right.
um so do you even need to have these things? And no, essentially you don't, if you know how to connect with people in that way. The beauty of social media, I don't really actually use it for garnering clients. What I do is, it's a way for you to have a sensory experience with other people so that they feel like they know you. They know, where you live. They know what your likes are. They know what your vibe is, what your, some people gravitate, like most of my social media content for myself is very like light and airy. I usually use like pastel, I mean, like it looks like me. um, and some of my clients are vastly different. Some of them have a more darker vibe and they like a very minimalistic thing. But you do all of that so that you can connect with your clients, because we have to find a way to get to know people that we want to work with through this digital screen that we're all, maneuvering through. Um, and so that's kind of where it all ties together within that sensory experience. Most people don't really think that their Instagram is a sensory experience, but the fastest way to get connections to people is if they can feel like they're in that space with you.
Yeah, that's interesting because when I started this podcast out, and we're kind of getting to the end here, but when I started this podcast out, I want to make this point, because that's a great place to even just end before we talk about your offers, is this came to my mind because I was having a lot of thoughts about technology versus personal connection. And I was really going back to the bedside when I was in the hospital and when computer charting started happening. And so there was so much connection that happened within an electronic medical record, because if I'm sick and I'm in the hospital here in Utica, upstate New York, if a hospital with a specialist, or I'm in another hospital and they have the same electronic medical record, they can see, and there's less chance for mistakes, things like that. So it's a good thing. But what I
Yeah.
found is that people were, had their head in the computer, and you see it when people are out to dinner, right? Everybody's on their phone. We're really not connecting. So it started to make me think about this whole process with connection, which took me down this rabbit hole of starting the podcast. And it really started with technology versus non-technology. And people, my clients, are craving personal connection, but that doesn't mean the technology is bad. So it's interesting when you say that people don't think about Instagram. I probably didn't either. It's a sensory, um, it's still a sensory experience. And so how can we the duality of technology and human connection and presence in the middle, because right, we can be on this screen and I feel very connected to you today, and we're over Zoom, right? Literally across the country, right?
Right.
Here in California, we're literally on opposite ends.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can be in a house with somebody and can feel completely alone and disconnected and not present, right? So I don't think technology is bad. I remember my husband saying to me, "Oh, so you're starting a podcast, that's technology." I'm like, "No, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying, how do we live in the duality of both and accept both, but keep both in check, right? Like, understand the importance of technology, especially in the entrepreneur world, and then
Yep.
still being able to connect to people on a personal level. So I think it sounds like you're doing a lot of that in your business. You're taking both of those things, um, and having presence in your life with your
Yep.
clients, on different spectrums with your art, with your tech.
Yep.
And so it's a perfect combination and kind of a place for me to kind of like just pull all that together because that's literally how this thought about the Connection Project started, was about technology versus non-technology. I didn't want to talk about that every week, but it is in the background of how can both live, and we still flourish as a society and not
Yep.
just be in our phone,
Yep.
right? Or in our computer.
It's a point that I bring up a lot with my clients who are so resistant, but everybody, they want to have a business, but they don't want to be on Facebook. They want to have a business and they don't want to do ads. And I remind all of them that I met every single one of these people because, and most 90% of all of them clicked on that same Facebook ad during the pandemic to go take a yoga teacher training class through Yoga Farm.
Right.
and we all found each other through that space through Zoom. I have most of my clients through them. And then we also have had multiple opportunities to go on retreats. So now I have met these people in person. The people that I have met in person through the retreats, we have gone on to, some of them are my clients. Some of them are people that I am co-hosting retreats with. Some of them I'm doing other business work with. That network has spread out so far and so wide in so many different ways through
It's
one little Facebook ad.
so true because I started, because really that's how I met you, because I signed up in Yoga Farm during the pandemic. I never finished my cert. I hate to even say that out loud, but I never finished my cert because I went down all these other rabbit holes and was having almost my spiritual awakening at that point
Yes.
and a lot of personal stuff. So I found Kim Beekman and I did her program and then I really got invested in that and I just never went back and finished my cert. So it's on my list for 2024. My
Girl,
yoga
I'm on my second round of trying to finish my Kundalini.
cert. So, and
That,
that's how I met. I'm hosting my Sedona retreat with Christy, who I
yep,
met through Kim, and I have had so many, and that's how doing the challenge with you. I mean, we wouldn't have met. So I
right.
definitely am not saying tech is bad, but how do we live in this world and continue to have connection that is important and good and really flourishing connection? Because
Yeah.
like I said, we can be on the screen and be totally connected and we can be in person and not be present with each other at the dinner table. So there isn't one or the other. And I wanted to just start to explore that. So this is a great way for us to end because I kept you long today. Because you have so much to talk about.
Yeah.
So much that is interesting. So if you could give our listeners like one or two nuggets, I think around, we really kind of hit on a lot of entrepreneur stuff. So for a couple nuggets for entrepreneurs that are listening, that are either afraid of tech or afraid of that, like what would you say?
Um, entrepreneurship really will bring out all of your personal everything. And so if it isn't tech stuff, it's going to be something. And my biggest piece of advice is, um, not only do you not have to do it alone, but that it is so important to do it in community. Um, you will find that the doors are easier and more abundant when you, and I'm not saying you have to take on partners in your business, but find mentors, find coaches, find community groups. I found when I started my business, I found a lot of them on Facebook. I, would search through like Los Angeles women's business groups, and there are abundant resources that are free and available. And
Love that.
People
I love that.
really, really, and I think especially after quarantine and the pandemic and the past couple of years, um, people really want to get connected in community and in person. Um, and once you start to look for those resources, it makes your job as an entrepreneur so much easier.
That has been a theme at almost every episode so far. Is, we've talked a lot about healing, our healing journeys in different episodes, and connecting to yourself, where I think it starts.
Yeah,
But we've talked a lot about, we can't forget the importance of, once you start that healing journey and connecting to who you really are, finding the community that
yeah,
lifts you up, because community is so important. And I could go on and on about that, but that's how we lived in the past. And we sometimes aren't living like that now in many
yeah,
places. And so community is hugely important. So I think we will end there. That is a beautiful connection and community, and just finding your people. They will come if you connect to yourself. I love it.
absolutely.
I love it. So, if you want to tell us quickly about some of your offers, know that Ariana's, all her information will be on, I'll have it on the session notes. They'll be there, how you can connect with her. If you need a website, if you need some information
Yeah.
on tech,
Um,
I know there'll be a lot of entrepreneurs listening. Um, yeah.
yeah. So, on the small scale of my coaching, I'm a level 2 inner alignment coach, and I love to help people work through, um, not just in entrepreneurial world, but also just in I mean, I started off just on my own personal nonsense of, when you get to the space of your life when you're sick of hearing your own story, that's where I was. And I love people. I love helping people in that space, to move past, and find abundance in their life.
Mm.
Um, and then shifting into the entrepreneurial world, I combined that with, manifesting your business. And so we will co-create together, a business website, your social media, and what that all looks like in congruence with your, soul's alignment. So you feel good and encouraged and empowered within your business. And both of those look like about an 8 to 10 week program. So from start to finish, you will have a fully functional business by the end of the 10 weeks. Which also, you will be able to generate afterwards. The goal for me is that you don't need me afterwards. um, and then on the bigger scale, I have 2 retreats happening this year. One in May, which will be in the French Alps with, 2 other lovely women, that we are co-creating kind of this week of connecting into your wild self again. We'll be up in the mountains, forest bathing, having yoga experiences every day, artistic, sacred play, artistic, classes. We'll be watercoloring and just relishing in the beauty of the French Alps. And then in September, I have another retreat, which is smaller. It will be in Tuscany. So we'll start off in Florence, we'll go into Tuscany, and that will be for 6 people. And that will really be an immersive Italian experience of food, culture. We'll be there during the wine harvest. There will also obviously be daily, gatherings of connection within the spiritual space. So, meditation, yoga, art, again, watercolor, painting, all of the fun things.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for anybody out there, hit Ariana up with all her offers. And thank you so much for coming on. I know I
Thank you for
overkept
having me.
you, and great conversation. Thank you so much.
This
All
was
right,
beautiful.
everybody. I'll see you next time.
See you next time.